Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So we're going my favorite mid-range targets for week 7 of the NFL season over on Draftkings. Yesterday I posted my favorite high-end targets, and then tomorrow morning I have my favorite value plays posted as well, so keep an eye out for those. And if you find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like on the video. And if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out and I really do appreciate it. And without further ado, let's get right into it. So we'll start with the quarterback position as always, and there's a couple of mid-range quarterbacks I like quite a bit this week. They both draw really good matchups, but we're going to start here with Matthew Stafford at $6,500, and this is pretty much the nuts matchup versus the Atlanta Falcons. The quarterbacks go off versus them each and every single week. Like, they're just getting absolutely killed through the air. They're allowing 350 passing yards per game, 3 passing touchdowns per game. They're 30th DVOA versus the pass. They're also allowing 32.6 DraftKings points per game allowed to the position, which is dead last in the league. And Matthew Stafford, I think he's going to have a pretty big game here. I know last week it didn't go that well versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is another very good matchup. But keep in mind the Lions did have that game kind of in check, and they didn't have to throw the ball too much and air it out. And I feel like he's going to have to in this game with them being 2.5-point dogs and a 55.5-point over-under. They have a pretty high implied team total as well. So expect this to be pretty much a back-and-forth shootout with pretty poor defenses on both sides of the ball. And he's got good options to get the ball to in GOLLADAY and TJ Hockenson, who you might see later on in this video. So Stafford, love the matchup here. Love the game environment. I think he's going to bounce back in a big way versus the Atlanta Falcons this week. And the next quarterback I want to talk about is rookie quarterback Justin Herbert at $6,400. He has looked very good so far in his few game sample size. I know it's a small sample size, but he is playing very well. He played pretty well fantasy-wise versus the New Orleans Saints, and that's obviously a pretty tough matchup, especially for a rookie quarterback on the road. So I'm liking what I'm seeing from Justin Herbert here, and the Chargers are going to be one of the top offenses to target on this slate. They're decently priced for the most part, and they have one of the higher applied team totals at 28.25 this week. They are 7.5-point favorites, and the over-under is only at 49, which I know some years 49 over-under looks pretty good, but this year we're seeing a lot of games in the high 50 or mid to high 50s, so it doesn't look that appealing, but it's still pretty decent. Game for fantasy purposes here. The Jacksonville Jaguars defense versus the pass has been pretty bad so far this season. They're actually dead last DVOA-wise, 32nd DVOA versus the pass, and they're 25th in quarterback points allowed per game with nearly 275 passing yards per game and 2 passing touchdowns. And Justin Herbert, he's actually averaging nearly 300 passing yards per game so far and a little bit over 2 passing touchdowns. He's also going down the field as well with 8.5 yards per attempt. He's got good options to get the ball to in Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Hunter Henry. He's got some good running backs, decent running backs as well, in Joshua Kelly and Justin Jackson. So Justin Herbert, I like him quite a bit. And I got to be honest, I'm probably going to end up with either Justin Herbert or Matthew Stafford in cash games this week. And I'm having a heck of a time trying to figure out which one I'm going to go with. So I think it's probably just going to depend what wide receivers I use. If I want to use Keenan Allen, I'll probably pair him up with Justin Herbert. If I want to go the Golladay route, I'll go with Matthew Stafford. If I use both, it's going to be even tougher for me. So it might just depend on what tight end I use. But I do like both these guys quite a bit. They're in very good matchups, and I think the prices are fairly priced. All right, now we'll move on to the running back position. I only have one listed here, and that's KAREEM Hunt, obviously at $6,800. But I just want you guys to keep in mind that I had Chris Carson and Mike Davis almost making this list. I just don't want to have too many players listed to make this too long of a video. So I decided with my favorite one in KAREEM Hunt, who gets a pretty good matchup here versus Cincinnati. He played very well in the first matchup in week 2 versus Cincinnati, where he had 24 fantasy points. And keep in mind, that's when Nick Chubb was still available. And with Nick Chubb out, KAREEM Hunt is going to serve as the clear-cut RB1 in this offense, which before last week in the Ravens game, I know 2 tougher teams, they have been scoring a lot of points. Now, I know they've had some decently easy matchups besides the Colts game, but still, this was an offense that's putting up some of the most points per game in the league, and I feel like they get more so on track in their old ways where they were scoring a lot of points here versus Cincinnati. Last week versus Pittsburgh, the offense was absolutely awful. Baker Mayfield's kind of playing a bit hurt, which he was getting pressure all day, and it was just killing the offense, and he threw that early pick 6, which kind of killed momentum to start the game even. But I'm expecting a big bounce-back performance here for the Cleveland Browns. They're also favored here by 3.5 points, and that should set up well for KAREEM Hunt. He's also involved in the passing game as well. And we know KAREEM Hunt's one of the most talented running backs in all the NFL, and since he doesn't have to share the workload with Nick Chubb, I think we should view him as one of the top options on this slate. I feel like he should be just a little bit more expensive. So at $1,600, I do feel pretty good about it. If looking at Cincinnati's numbers per game so far, giving up the running back position, they are giving up 24.5 DraftKings points per game, which is actually mid-pack, but still 120 rushing yards per game, and they're 23rd DVOA versus the run. So it's a good matchup here for KAREEM Hunt. I think the Browns are going to be playing with the lead, and they should be able to establish the run with KAREEM Hunt, and he's going to be involved in the passing game as well. So big fan of Hunt this week in all formats, and I feel pretty good about putting him in your cash game lineups or even in tournaments as well. And then moving on to the wide receiver position, you're going to see a bit of correlation here with the wide receivers, with the quarterbacks I already talked about, but I'm liking those stacks quite a bit because these guys aren't overly expensive and they draw really good matchups. But we'll start with Kenny Golladay here at 6,700. He's actually a little expensive, so I don't know if we're going to be able to get there in cash games, considering I'd rather spend it for some quarterbacks, or not quarterbacks, I'm sorry, for some running backs instead, and potentially another wide receiver one, like maybe a DeAndre Hopkins or Devontae Adams. Not sure how likely that is to be able to fit those guys in, but I definitely prioritize spending up for a running back over a wide receiver. But I love this spot for Kenny Golladay. He's only played 3 games so far this season, but he's done well in each and every single one. He did not score last week, but don't forget he got down at the 1-yard line. He still had over 100 yards receiving. Then he scored touchdowns in the 2 prior games as well. But I just love this matchup. I kind of already talked about how bad Atlanta is versus the pass when it comes to quarterbacks, but they suck versus wide receivers too. They're allowing the 3rd most points per game to the position with about 47 points per game allowed, over 200 receiving yards per game, and over a receiving touchdown per game to the position as well. So Kenny Golladay is a very talented wide receiver. I love pairing up with Matthew Stafford in tournaments. If you can get there in cash games, I like that too. It's just nearly $7,000 is a bit steep, but it still falls under the mid-range. So I really like Kenny Golladay quite a bit. It's just a matter if you're going to be able to afford him in more so cash lineups. If you're building tournaments, yeah, you can make that your building block, like a Golladay, Matthew Stafford stack, and then run it back with some of the Falcons players. But love Kenny Golladay, love the spot, super talented wide receiver, and I don't really see who's going to be able to stop him on this defense. Then moving on to our second wide receiver, like I said, we're going to have some correlation here with our wide receivers with our quarterbacks, and right here we get the Keenan Allen, Justin Herbert combo, and I love this price tag for Keenan Allen, only $6,200. And like I mentioned earlier, the Jaguars do have the 32nd ranked DVOA pass defense, which is dead last in the league. And now Keenan Allen, he still scored the last time they played. They coming off the bye week, but keep in mind he left the game really early with back spasms and never was able to come back into the game. But apparently he's going to be good to go here in the bye week. Definitely makes me feel a little bit better about that since he's had time to rest. And I like this price tag a lot. I think he's just way too cheap. And it's going to be hard to get away from him in all formats, to be honest. I feel like he's going to be pretty chalky, but I think that's for good reason. He's getting nearly 10 targets per game right now, nearly seven catches per game. And he's killing it in the air yards department. A 31% target share, a 68% weighted opportunity share, 30% market share of the team's air yards. ADOT only 8.8, but just looking at the other metrics in terms of his volume in the passing game, which is actually what I kind of meant to say over air yards. Apologize about that. But I like Keenan Allen quite a bit. This is a very good matchup versus the Jaguars. If you're looking at how they've done specifically versus wide receivers this season, they're allowing 36.7 DraftKings points per game to the position, which is 17th in the league, 166 receiving yards, and overall it's a very good matchup here for Keenan Allen. He has one of the biggest wide receiver versus quarterback matchup advantages according to PFF this week. I also didn't mention it with Kenny Golladay, but Kenny Golladay actually has the largest wide receiver versus quarterback advantage matchup this week according to PFF. So love Keenan Allen, love Kenny Golladay, and all the metrics say that they are going to be fantastic plays this weekend. And then our third and final receiver is Terry McLaurin at 5,800. And I got to be honest, I feel like I can just say this now. I know I don't like to say things like I'm going to lock him in early on in the week, but I'm going to lock in Terry McLaurin for cash games. I just don't see a way around it. I mean, he's just too cheap. He gets plenty of volume. He's coming off a 12-target game. I know he's got poor quarterback play, but he can kind of make up for that with talent and volume alone. And this is the matchup you can just dream of versus Dallas. They are just so bad versus the wide receiver position. I mean, wide receivers pretty much go off versus them each and every single week. We saw on Monday Night Football, Christian Kirk, he only caught 2 balls, but they were 2 bombs. And like that Dallas defense is just not very good. And I think Terry McLaurin should have a pretty big game here at $5,800. He grades out very well in projections. And I know the football team, it's never fun rostering these guys because they always have low implied team totals. But we only have a 1-point spread here. And they're actually favored in this game versus Dallas. And if we're looking at McLaurin's numbers this year, a 28% target share, a 73% weighted opportunity share, a 45% market share of the team's air yards this season, and he's pretty much the only talented pass catching option in this offense. I know Logan Thomas exists, but I wouldn't really say he's super talented. And if we're just looking at the matchup numbers specifically for Terry McLaurin here, Dallas is allowing 46.8 DraftKings points per game to the position, which is 28th in the league. They're 21st DVOA versus the pass, and they're allowing nearly 2 receiving touchdowns per game to the wide receiver position. So Terry McLaurin, I think he's got a good chance of going over 100 yards in this game. He's probably going to find the end zone once, maybe even twice. So love the price tag here. Love the matchup. I know it's never fun having Kyle Allen throwing you the football, but the price is great here, and I love the talent of Terry McLaurin. So big fan of him this weekend. And then moving on to the tight end position, we're going to see some more overlap here with our quarterbacks that I mentioned earlier and even the wide receivers, but it kind of just falls in line because they're all in the mid-range and they all get great matchups. So I'm kind of liking these little mini stacks here with Herbert, Henry, Keenan Allen. Also like the Stafford, GOLLADAY, TJ Hockenson stack that I'm going to talk about right now. So Hockenson, he's not like a huge target guy. He's getting about 5 targets per game, which is fine, only 15% target share, but he is scoring touchdowns, over a half a touchdown per game so far this season. But I'm mostly interested in this matchup, which is great for Atlanta. They are just so awful versus every aspect. Versus the pass, they suck versus quarterbacks, they suck versus wide receivers, and they suck versus tight ends. 30th DVA versus the pass, allowing 21.1 DraftKings points per game to the position, which is the 3rd most in the league, allowing 73 receiving yards per game and over a receiving touchdown per game to tight ends. So TJ Hockenson, I like his chances of finding the end zone. I mean, the price tag is fine. It would be nice if he was a little bit cheaper because he doesn't get a whole bunch of targets, but the matchup's so good, and I think Matthew Stafford's going to have a pretty big day here. I think that's going to be more than likely from Kenny GOLLADAY and TJ Hockenson. And then the final guy I want to talk about in this video is Hunter Henry at $4,500. Big fan of the Chargers offense this week. You could even throw Mike Williams in this video as well. He's pretty cheap, and he's coming off a huge game versus the New Orleans Saints. But keep in mind, Keenan Allen did leave that game early. But Henry, he's getting targets this season. He has been playing pretty well. Nearly 7 targets per game. Not really scoring touchdowns, only 0.2 touchdowns per game right now, but a 20% target share, an 18% market share of the team's air yards, an ADOT of 8.2. And he's actually got the largest tight end versus safety matchup advantage according to PFF this week. Although he's actually tied with a couple of guys, but still tied for the most, like with Travis Kelce and Jared Cook. And if we're looking at the numbers of how Jacksonville has been versus the tight end position so far this season, allowing 15.4 DraftKings points per game, which is 24th most in the league, nearly a receiving touchdown per game, and 62 receiving yards. So Hunter Henry, I love this price tag. I think him or Travis Kelce are probably going to end up being the highest on tight ends on this slate, with TJ Hockenson being right behind them. But I like this price point. I think there's a good chance he finds the end zone, and he's obviously a very easy pairing with Justin Herbert this week. So that's going to be it for this video, guys. I hope it was helpful. If it was, make sure you guys leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. It really helps me out. I really do appreciate that. If you want to follow me over on social media, the handle's in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen. And if you want some more content over on Patreon, it's always much appreciated. Links down below for that. You get access into all my NFL DFS data sheets, the Discord chat, and all that fun stuff. So I'll see you guys in the next one, which will be my value plays video. Probably end up getting that on Friday morning, and then we'll do a final thoughts video. Then we'll have the lineup building video, and then we'll do the core plays video as well. So a lot of content to come, so I do appreciate it. And I'm going to get out of here. Hope you guys enjoyed the game tonight, and I'll see you in the next one.